Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining. My name is Jack Alatesh, and today in Elite Dangerous, we're going to wrap up the mini-series on the minor factions. For those of you who are just joining in the minor faction discussion, or for those of you who have forgotten everything, the minor factions are the NPC organizations which have control rights to stations and outposts within systems. They're also the folks that make up the mission givers over on the mission board. So back on the main topic, the first thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to find a system in which you can reasonably have a very good shot at influencing the outcome of the system in terms of who's controlling what. So the way you do that is go to the galaxy map and start looking for something that has a population and has a population of under 1.5 million. So in this case, when I arrived in the system, I had a population of about 7,900, give or take. So the population has gone up since I've been here. I don't know if I did that or the game is just kind of doing that. I guess more remains to be seen as I continue to work with the factions within this particular system. So the reason that you want to find a smaller system is because the amount of influence that is gained by the successful completion of each mission is factored down by a higher population. Basically, it takes more work to sway the influence in a system that has more people, which is fairly well mimics real life. You know, if you're in one of those towns that's like population 7, the chances that you could gain influence quickly are pretty big. Meanwhile, if you live in, like, I don't know, LA, your chance of gaining influence is quite a bit lower than your chance of ending up accidentally gaining infamy. So once you've found a system, the next thing you want to do is come out to said system, take a look at the assets that are visible in the system. So ideally, you want a couple of different places to land at. In the case of this one, there's just one of them here. So there's really not much going on in system as far as delivery missions and such are concerned. But ultimately, it's no big deal. This system's been a good one to bang around with. The second thing you want to do is under Station Services Center Pane at the bottom, you want to find the traffic report and see how many ships have passed through in the last 24 hours and do this for a couple of days. The Federal dropship is going to be mine as I've been flying in another system. The Cobra Mark III is going to be someone else, but I have not seen much traffic aside from that Cobra Mark III over the last, I don't know, 4 or 5 days. The system gets next to nobody going through. Now, the reason that you want that is because with the missions themselves or with the faction influence themselves, when most folks arrive inside of a system, the first thing they do if they're going to grab missions is they just pretty much steamroll. They grab all the type they like and then they fly off. If I'm trying to raise the influence of these guys while knocking down the influence of these guys, that's really not going to help out if somebody's coming and running a bunch of missions for them that increases their influence. Because I am one individual with limited playtime and other people are one individual with unlimited playtimes, or a bunch of individuals, it's entirely possible that anything I try and do with the Antares power core in this system falls flat on its face because they basically can't get a toehold. I'm not running enough missions for them due to time. So it's a good idea to find yourself a small system in the backwaters of the galaxy and that ends up with not a lot of foot traffic going through it. Works out nicely, gives you a nice blank sheet from which to begin manipulating things. The next thing you want to do is you want to make something happen. We'll go back into the mission board here just to point this whole thing out with a little bit of a visual, nexus to it. All right, so as we talked about in the past, the system influence bar is the king, champion, and basically alpha and omega of the background simulation as it faces the player. So if we want to make something happen, we want to make something happen. So the easiest way to do that is to get the system influence bars of 2 of the minor factions to be equal, at which point you can end up with one of 3 things going on. The first one's going to be a war if one of the factions is from out of system. The second thing is going to be a civil war, which a civil war is when two factions that live in the system are fighting with each other. And the third thing is going to be an election, which is basically the non-violent equivalent of a war. Once that thing happens, you're going to want to either capitalize like a fantastic mercenary, or you're going to want to have your faction end up winning, for whatever reason that it may be. Perhaps you show up in the system, you don't like the color blue because, why not? Blue is just awful today. But I do like anything that has power in the title of it because then it makes me feel amazing. So you go and you get these guys elected. They are now the controlling faction in the system, and pretty much off to the races you go. The other thing that you can do is you can get as much in the way of war going on as possible to get yourself a bunch of skimmer missions. Another thing, which would seem to be illogical, but I haven't seen any data on, I may end up just devoting the time to testing this. So we can see over here that the Blue Dragons have an anarchy archetype. That is the type of organization they are. So the thing that I have to wonder is if they were to be in control of the system, would the system no longer be aligned with the Federation? Would it then go back into anarchy? And if it were an anarchy and you start a war, would it spawn tons of skimmer missions as opposed to just, I don't know, 4 or 5 at a shot when these two guys were fighting with each other? Really, I don't know. May end up seeing if that's a thing. The only real downside or the limiting factor that I see at the moment is these guys never seem to have any missions. They just kind of sit there skulking along at the bottom of the list. I don't know. Who knows? Maybe they're just waiting for whatever happens to minor factions that don't really do anything productive. So once you have finished doing whatever thing it is you set out to do, you beat a war, a civil war, etc. What you can do is you can effectively stick with that faction, and then you can attempt to push them over into a boom state by trading with them, by moving their data around, by completing missions for them. And then if you get lucky with the thing, you will have raised it far enough so that you can end up with them expanding into another system. In which case, pretty much you have to figure out where they expanded to, which is going to be a nearby system, generally one hop away, one jump away, one very small jump away in many cases, and then you want to assist them in that one and basically just assist their spread as it goes on throughout by helping them to gain influence and to be profitable. Now, looking at what exactly happened here, you've probably no doubt noticed that the influence of these guys is fairly different, but I don't have a great faction reputation with the Power Core here. When I showed up, the Blue Creative and Power were at war with one another. Power owns some planetary settlements a couple of jumps over, so Blue Creative decided to put out a whole bunch of skimmer missions, and because I'm a greedy player, I snapped up all those skimmer missions and went and blew up a whole bunch of their stuff. So in some cases, just more or less base trashing for the purposes of base trashing, because why not? Now, it's also worth pointing out that I took every mission I could for the Indara's Power Core, the reason being is to counterbalance all the damage I was doing to my reputation with the faction by blowing up all of their stuff. As you can see, it netted me the end result of ending up unfriendly with them, which is fine. I've got pretty much a whole list of missions that I've picked up from them, just jumping in throughout the day every now and again, just grab those missions. Once I run them, that should put me back up somewhere closer to neutral, and if not, I'll just keep beating away at it as I have time. So the other thing that's interesting to note is that if you'll recall, when a faction loses stuff, when they have ships blown up or anything on a planet, you're popping their generators left and right, the security status of them on the background sim is going to drop. So we have civil unrest sitting over here. Probably shouldn't have put that in green. Probably should put it in red. We have civil unrest going on here. That may or may not be a direct result of what I did with them, just basically trashing all of their bases over in their home system of Anharis. So I was over there, I had skimmer missions, they ended up bugging out on me, so yeah, I got a little torqued, and I'm flying around a federal gunship. I got some rockets sitting on there for blasting skimmers, so I don't have to go out and dork with them in the SRV quite as much. And yeah, so I just started trashing their skimmers, blowing up turrets, popping generators, all kinds of fun stuff. What'll end up happening is that will cause civil unrest. Basically, they'll end up in a state in which things are not exactly as stable from a governmental perspective. So it's possible that happened as a result of what I was doing, which would be pretty cool. The other pending state that they have is expansion, and I'm not quite sure how that works if their security is getting low. What it may be, and obviously there's no data for this is just speculation, we'll see how it plays out and see if we can't learn a thing or two from there, is the civil unrest comes from losing a bunch of their stuff. The expansion comes from them being in a boom over in their home system of Anharis. So which, while I was over there, I did happen to dock up a couple times. I did note that they are, in fact, in a boom, and they have been in a boom. So generally, your booms will lead to expansions because, hey, we got a lot of money, let's move in somewhere else. But anyhow, there's a brief backstory on the system as it pertains to me, as well as a look at how to find a system to mess with the background simulation in, making something happen within that system between a couple of factions, and then things to look at when it finishes, when that thing finishes. You can either do that thing again, or you can try and see if you can make them expand, as well as a brief history on what happened in my system. So I think that's about where we will wrap this one up. If I've missed anything, or you'd like anything further clarified as far as the background simulation is concerned as it pertains to minor factions, or pretty much anything else within Elite Dangerous, absolutely leave me a comment in the video description down below. If you enjoy the video and you'd like to see more of them, please feel free to subscribe if you haven't already, and as well as whack that thumbs up button. Those things are always appreciated. And as always, I'm Jack Alatesh. Thanks for joining and fly safe.